All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2025 Teach Access Student Academy. I'm Mindy Colin, the Director of Development and Industry Partnerships. For those that might just be joining us, welcome to the Student Academy. We are excited that you are here spending time with us to learn about disability and accessibility. This is the final session for the Teach Access Student Academy. We will have recordings of all sessions available soon if you missed any sessions or want to rewatch. I'd like to thank our sponsors for helping to create this free event. Merck, our presenting sponsor, and support from Verizon, Microsoft, Google, Salesforce, and Meta. Before we start, I want to go over a few key items. Our chat is disabled. However, you can send a message directly to the hosts and panelists through the chat feature. We have captions provided by a live captioner. So to access those, you can click the CC icon at the bottom of the menu bar. To view the ASL interpreters, find the interpretation button at the bottom menu bar with the icon that looks like a globe. Click that and select American Sign Language, and a new window will pop open that you can move around your screen for preferred viewing. Feel free to use the Q&A feature to send questions during the session. Everyone will be able to view those questions, but you can also submit them anonymously. If you have any other questions, concerns, or accommodation needs during the session, use the chat feature and send a message to the hosts. This session is recorded and will be made available after the event. At this point, I am pleased to introduce you to our presenters, Catherine Sherry, Delivery Leader, Digital Accessibility and XD at Onward Search, and Hannah Holmgren, Head of Product and Operations at Making Space. Ladies, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Mindy. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. We're really excited to have this conversation about accessibility in the job search process and how we can align on true inclusion. My name is Hannah, and I'm joined by Kathy. Together, we'll not only explore why accessibility is critical, but also how we, as job seekers and employers, can take proactive steps to ensure an equitable hiring process for all. Job searching can already feel like a full-time job, but for disabled candidates, it often comes with additional barriers, from inaccessible application platforms to outdated hiring practices that fail to accommodate diverse needs. Today, we'll walk through actionable strategies to help you advocate for yourself, optimize your materials for accessibility, and identify inclusive employers. And one key takeaway that we want to reinforce from the start: accessibility should be the default, not just for job seekers, but also for hiring managers. By assuming that accessibility is needed in every interaction, we can proactively create a more inclusive hiring experience for everyone. So let's dive in.
Let's start with introductions. I'm Catherine Sherry. I'm a Caucasian woman with brown hair, brown eyes, a pink striped sweater. I go by she, her pronouns. I am the director of staffing here at Onward Accessibility, which is a division of Onward Search. I lead inclusive hiring efforts and recruitment of accessibility professionals here. Onward Accessibility is a digital accessibility services-based organization that provides the solutions to get accessible and the talent to stay accessible. How I got involved in accessibility, kind of just fell into it like many of us. I joined Onward Search originally as a tech recruiter, coming from a long-standing recruitment background. Started working on some accessibility engineering roles, started doing some research on what those even were, and was actually pretty floored by the fact that these were actual jobs, that things aren't made accessibly from the beginning. Took a huge interest in it, got CPAC certified, and now just delving full throttle ahead with digital accessibility and loving every second of it. Some fun facts about me: I have two absolutely perfect kids under 5, an 11-year-old English bulldog that rules our entire home, and my husband and I are board game hobbyists, and we own over 250 board games. Super excited to be here, and throwing it over to Hannah.
Thanks, Kathy. So yes, I am Hannah Holmgren, head of product and operations at Making Space, which is a platform that brings competitive learning and career opportunities to the disabled community. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a Caucasian woman with short, dark brown hair and dark brown eyes. I am wearing a black turtleneck with an oatmeal colored shirt over top. I got into digital accessibility by being the person at every company who asked, so what happens when things don't go as planned? While my other software colleagues were focused on the happy path, I was always drawn to those edge cases, the situations where systems break down for users. Without realizing it at first, that mindset meant that I was building products for accessibility all along, even though it did earn me a reputation as the skeptic when it came to product management. My product journey actually started at a staffing agency that became staffing software for the cannabis industry, where I saw firsthand how technology could either open doors or create additional barriers in hiring. Over time, I also started recognizing my own needs in digital spaces and saw how often they overlapped with others. And if my needs weren't being considered, how many millions more were being overlooked? And that's what really solidified my passion, not just solving for accessibility, but making it the default rather than the afterthought. And a couple of fun facts about me. I am very into Formula One. I have a Max Verstappen keychain attached to my phone. And then also I'm a trained opera singer.
Hannah, you are so cool. I think you're the only trained opera singer I know. So discussion agenda, what are we chatting about today? Importance of digital accessibility, why it's important to begin with. Job seeker assets to make accessible. What are some assets that we use while we're looking for our next role? We're going to give some digital accessibility tips for job seekers. We're going to shift over to employer actions to look for. How do you find that perfect fit for yourself? Self-advocacy guidance, and then we're going to end with plenty of time for question and answers. And then, of course, we'd love to hear some conversation and back and forth with some tips that we didn't mention that folks in the audience are actively using and find really helpful as well. So let's dive in.
Disabled people are the world's largest minority. The World Health Organization, or WHO, reports that approximately 16% of the global population identifies as disabled. However, this number may be significantly higher when considering neurodivergence, mental illness, and chronic illnesses. Unfortunately, due to stigma and fear of disclosure, many people choose not to openly identify as disabled, contributing to the underrepresentation of disability in society. It is possible that a substantial portion of the population, even close to 50%, could identify as disabled. The social model of disability was the only model of disability developed by disabled people for disabled people. It was designed to remove societal barriers that prevent full participation in society and emphasizes that society, not medical conditions, makes people disabled. It also provides a solution. The late Judith Heumann, a disability rights activist, played a significant role in advancing the social model of disability by implementing anti-discrimination policies for disabled people. According to this model, disability is not something that exists solely within an individual, but is instead created by the attitudes, behaviors, and social structures of society. Another critical aspect of disability inclusion is digital accessibility. The modern workplace and public life rely on digital tools, yet many platforms, hiring systems, training materials, and communication channels remain inaccessible. This creates unnecessary barriers that prevent disabled people from fully participating in the workforce and broader society. Digital accessibility is not just about compliance. It is about ensuring that disabled people have equitable opportunities to engage with and contribute to all aspects of life. It is essential to normalize disabled people being experts in subjects beyond disability. Disabled people are engineers, lawyers, executives, hiring managers, recruiters, educators, and leaders across every single industry. For example, companies must recognize that it is highly likely a hiring manager or recruiter may be disabled, and all hiring materials, training, and workplace systems must be accessible by default. treating accessibility as an afterthought assumes that disabled professionals are always candidates rather than decision makers, reinforcing systemic exclusion. True inclusion means recognizing disabled people's expertise in all fields and ensuring that accessibility is embedded across all professional environments.
So, knowing that full well, how do we ensure that our assets are made accessible? Well, let's identify them. When we're in our job seeking process, we're using resumes. We're using our LinkedIn profiles, keeping those updated. We're doing LinkedIn posts, commenting on LinkedIn posts. We're using, if we come from a design background, more often than not, sometimes not, but more often than not, you're using online portfolios. Maybe you're building your own website. You're using social media assets. You're posting work samples. You're providing work samples if it's something that's perhaps a KPI-driven role. So what can we do as best practices to make these assets accessible? Well, let's talk about resumes first. Create an easy to read resume. Pictures, tables, graphs are usually not a best practice for resumes. If you're putting too much text in, it's going to make it hard for the hiring manager to really distinguish what's important. So try to use bulleted lists when possible. Consider checking your PDF resumes for accessibility using PDF accessibility checkers. You can also use Microsoft accessibility checkers for Word documents. Prioritize using plain language and spell out acronyms when possible. Sometimes some folks might be reading your resume that don't really know about the specific acronyms that are used in your field. So always revert back to spelling those out. I'd also like to revert back to something that Jenny Kowalski mentioned in her session earlier today about accessible digital communication, which was amazing. There's a Hemingway app that can be really helpful in checking your language. So I'm going to use that from now on for everything, but wanted to call that out. Using accessible fonts like Calibri or Arial are going to be really helpful in making sure that fonts are accessible. Try to avoid using all caps when you can. That can make things a little bit more difficult for someone to read. Use proper heading structure. Make sure that they're appropriately named. But when you're putting in contact information, it's usually a pretty good practice to put that information in the main body of the text and not in a header. Sometimes information in headers and footers might not be able to be read by a screen reader. So you always want to make sure that your contact information and how the person can reach you is readable. Consider using visual indicators like bolding, italicizing to illustrate emphasis when needed, but try not to use underlines as that can suggest that there's a hyperlink when there really isn't one actually there. When adding your LinkedIn profile or portfolio link to your resume, make sure you're using meaningfully named hyperlinks. So avoid using click here to describe your link. Screen readers will at times read out each letter in a hyperlink, which can really make things unnecessarily time consuming. So that's why meaningfully named links might be a little bit more useful. However, email addresses are the exception. Of course, you're going to want to make sure that spelling is of the utmost importance there for email addresses. Let's talk about LinkedIn profiles, social media assets. When you're posting content, try not to overuse emojis. This can be extremely distracting to someone with or even without a screen reader. Try to use camel case when using hashtags when possible. If you're posting videos, make sure that there's captions enabled, audio descriptions. And if you're posting content, whether it be on LinkedIn, Twitter, any other feeds, try to avoid using idioms when possible. It could be a bit confusing to folks from different cultural or language backgrounds. Online portfolios, adding alt text to images is going to be super important. For those who don't know, alt text is a written description that's added to an image to illustrate what's being shown. So making sure that your alt text is concise, no longer than a sentence or two, but really considering what's important about the image is going to be really helpful. If the image is decorative, it's okay to mark it as decorative as long as there's no meaningful content that's being illustrated there. Consider color contrast when designing your site. Of course, if it's your online portfolio, you're going to want to have your specific flair to it, which is great, but always remember accessible design is good design. So make sure that color contrast is there. If you're using anything like a carousel on a website or a video, just make sure that there's options for people to stop that if they'd like. And finally, work samples. If you have work samples that illustrate graphs, charts, follow the same steps as shared for alt text, just to make sure you're putting insightful information in there for the alt text. So for example, if you have a pie chart with percentages, those percentages should also be written out in the alt text as well. So these are just, of course, not an exhaustive list, but just a few things that you can adjust really quickly in some of your job seeking assets that can make your job search a little bit more accessible to hiring managers as well.
All right, so we have a few things that you can look for when seeking employment in an accessible and inclusive environment. It is important to evaluate both a company's public-facing materials and how they conduct their hiring process. These are just some key indicators that a workplace is committed to accessibility and inclusion. You'll want to look for inclusive job descriptions. So these are job postings that use clear, plain language and avoid ableist or exclusionary language. A truly inclusive job description will focus on essential skills rather than arbitrary requirements, such as unnecessary physical demands or excessive experience levels. Companies committed to accessibility may also explicitly welcome disabled candidates and acknowledge transferable skills gained through lived experience. A strong employer will likely also have a publicly available accessibility statement outlining their commitment to disability inclusion. The statement should go beyond basic compliance and detail the organization's approach to accessibility in hiring, workplace accommodations, digital platforms, and overall employee experience. The platforms or job boards where their job listings are posted should also be accessible. Do they use specialized platforms like Making Space? If a company is posting jobs on websites that are not screen reader friendly, they lack captioned videos, or require complex, inaccessible application processes, that may indicate a lack of awareness or commitment to digital accessibility. An inclusive employer ensures that job postings and application portals are designed with accessibility in mind. An equitable hiring process also allows for flexibility in scheduling interviews, offering multiple formats such as video, phone, or written responses, and does not penalize candidates for requiring alternative communication methods. Companies that proactively ask about accommodation needs before the interview also signal that they value inclusion from the outset. And lastly, the best employers have a transparent, well-documented process for requesting and implementing accommodations. This includes clear contact information for accommodation requests, a simple and non-burdensome procedure, and a culture that normalizes accessibility needs rather than treating them as exceptions. We also want to talk about self-advocacy during the hiring process, and once you do begin work at a new organization. The key to self-advocacy is really to be upfront about your needs every step of the way. Clearly communicating your access needs from the start ensures that employers understand how to support you and helps create a more inclusive hiring process. It's important to know your rights as well. So familiarize yourself with workplace disability laws, such as the ADA in the US or the Equality Act in the UK, so you can confidently advocate for reasonable accommodations. Have confidence in your skills and the value that you bring. Self-advocacy isn't just about accommodations. It's about making sure employers see your talent, experience, and the unique strengths that you bring to the role. Your advocacy can create real change. When you push for accessibility, you're not just benefiting yourself, you're helping to create a more inclusive workplace for future disabled employees as well. So ask for what you need without apology. Your access needs are not a burden. They're part of what allows you to work effectively. Framing accommodations as essential for productivity helps shift the perspective. But of course, that does mean that we need to prepare for having those tough conversations. Some employers may lack awareness about disability inclusion. Having a clear professional way to explain your needs and rights can help navigate these discussions seamlessly. Utilize those support networks as well. Organizations like Making Space, Disability In, and Job Accommodation Network offer resources and community support to help navigate the job search and employment process. And lastly, practice advocacy beyond hiring. Once you're in a role, continue advocating for career advancement opportunities, workplace accessibility improvements, and policies that foster long-term inclusion for everyone.
So we left a lot of time because we want to hear from you. We have all the answer, I mean, maybe not all the answers, but many answers to some questions. We'd love to hear about what you're seeing out there, what's working for you, what isn't working for you. And we'd love to answer any questions based off of our experiences that you have relating to anything as it pertains to aligning on inclusion in your job search.
Okay, so hi, this is Mindy speaking. So we're going to turn the chat back on so that people can put comments in the chat. Hold on, just give us one moment. In the meantime, I know that a question that's come up for several of the presenters has been for someone newly graduating or in school looking to get into this field. It seems like there's a lot of competition and not a lot of jobs. Do you have any advice for recent college graduates looking to get into accessibility?
Yes. I could go first, and then Hannah, if there's anything I missed, I would love for you to follow up. I talk to a lot of folks like this every single day. Here are my tips, and something that folks alluded to earlier on today as well is that if it's not an accessibility specific role, do your best to learn about accessibility, get involved in accessibility, and whatever role you get into, you can practice accessibility in that role. You don't have to be confined to being specifically on an accessibility team. If you're really trying to get that experience on your resume so that you actually have that hands-on expertise, I always love to refer people to Knowbility. Their accessible internet rally is great. It's a great opportunity to work with like-minded professionals in the field, do good, but also get some project work on your resume. Doing something as easy as reaching out to a local business that has a tricky website, if you're looking to get into digital accessibility, and then seeing if they're cool with you just running a quick audit and then putting those specific projects on your resumes could be really good opportunities for you to show that you're keeping in touch with accessibility. Of course, looking at specific certifications out there is going to be really helpful. Of course, cost is also an issue, but if that is something that you're able to do, looking into IAAP certifications, anything that even LinkedIn course certifications are great. Anything that gets you out there, being able to network with the community, the digital accessibility community is so amazing, which is why I love it so much. Everyone is willing to help each other. And I think that's what makes this just such a great place to go into for your career. And yes, I saw that question pop up real quick. IAAP stands for International Association of Accessibility Professionals. And I gave that advice and I didn't follow it. So thank you for calling me out on that. Hannah, if you have anything to add.
Just want to say that I think that advice rings true for getting into any field. I didn't start working within product until later in my career by most standards. But I realized that once I did start working within product, that everything else that I had done had contributed to me getting there. And so while I didn't have formal product experience like some of my colleagues, I brought other things to the table that made me better at what I did. than I thought I would be. So I think that that's incredible advice, especially for accessibility, because it's everywhere, whether it's physical accessibility or digital accessibility. There's always ways to learn more, practice making things more accessible for yourself and for others. So you kind of can't go wrong as long as you're asking those questions and trying to learn.
Great, thank you. Another question would be, when candidates are interviewing, are there questions that they could be asking the potential employer to find out about their stance on accessibility?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first of all, I feel like there's a fear with asking about accessibility. Like, because you're asking about accessibility, people are immediately assuming that you're asking because you have access requirements. And I don't think that it should matter one way or the other, because it is about inclusion first and foremost. But asking about things like if they have an accessibility statement, or if they have uh, employee resource groups or ERGs within the organization that they can rely on, once they are hired, or other communities that they are a part of, to improve accessibility both within the organization and with individuals that the organization interacts with as well. I think it's absolutely okay to ask those specific questions. I think it's also okay to describe maybe some access needs that you might need during that process, before that process, really at any time. Hopefully they're asking you before you have to ask it. But it's obviously absolutely okay to be upfront about it.
There's a comment in the chat from Michelle. She said, for hiring managers, some accessibility hiring practices she's instituted are running job postings through software that gives recommendations to make the language more accessible, holds virtual info sessions about the job through a Zoom webinar where people can learn and ask questions, sends an interview guide with who will be at the interview, how long it will be, the purpose of the interview, the questions that will be asked, and extending an interview invitation. Everyone on the team takes a bias in hiring module and uses a pre-made rubric to evaluate the interviewees. So thank you for that, Michelle.
I love that.
Yeah, same. That's awesome.
Wonderful.
Merrill says bonus points if you copy the questions in the chat and ask them out loud and let the candidates know, oh, it disappeared. Let the candidates know who is interviewing them and their roles.
Yes, absolutely.
We have a question of what is an ERG?
My apologies. I thought I had explained that. I probably skipped over it. ERG stands for Employee Resource Group. It is actually, I don't know all that much about ERG specifically because I've never worked for an organization that had ERGs, because I come from the startup world where ERGs are not very common because there's 6 people in the full company. So Kathy, you probably have some more practical experience working with
Yes.
ERGs.
Employee led groups with like-minded professionals. A lot of them are very specific towards specific things. So if it's an employee research group that focuses on disabilities or just inclusion in general, it's just another way to get involved. But yes, an ERG is Employee Resource Group. Thanks for pointing that out.
Angelina asked a question. Is it better to have a trusted tester certification from the Department of Homeland Security or the IAA certification? She's not sure about the differences between the two. And I don't know if you know the answer to that.
Kind of. So, and I'm going to answer this question based off of my experience. From my experience, it seems that the gold standard for certifications in the accessibility realm are the certifications that are given by the IAAP, which is what I was referring to earlier. That's not to say that the DHS Trusted Tester Cert is not worth getting or, worse or anything like that. I just find that, from the staffing perspective, the clients that come to us looking for folks It's never, I mean, I personally have never seen yet where a certification has been absolutely necessary. But if a certification is preferred, I would say 99% of the time it's going to be one of the IAAP certifications, which does include the CPAC certification, that's CPACC, Certified Professional in Accessibility Core Competencies. That's the WAS certification, WAS, which is the Web Accessibility Specialist, and also the Accessible Document Specialist, which is the ADS cert that is more specific towards document accessibility. That's just from my experience.
Great. Hannah, anything on there, or should I go to the Q&A for you now?
Let's
Q&A it
let's
is.
go.
Okay, moving out of the chat into the Q&A. So an anonymous question, many have told me that as soon as they mention accessibility requirements for a job interview, they get ghosted. A lot of us think it hurts us, even though it's illegal. It's hard to prove and not worth a lawsuit. What are your thoughts? And I think the question is, what are your thoughts on mentioning the accessibility requirements at a job interview?
Well, I'm going to be 100% honest. Coming from the staffing world, I am a little biased, but I will say that Onward Search does not do this. But generally, the bad rap is that staffing companies are probably going to ghost you regardless. So this job market is a little wild right now. So I would say that a lot of folks are being ghosted, regardless of if they disclose an accommodation request or not. I personally am of the thought that it's always best to be totally upfront because realistically, if that organization has any sort of issue with whatever that request is, if it's disability related, if it's just production related, then you're likely not going to want to work at that organization regardless. So that's just a really good way of weeding through where that perfect fit is going to be for you. And if you're not on the same ethics and morals, you're likely not going to be happy there for the long term anyway.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And as somebody who has in the past purposefully hidden or not disclosed my disability early on and then had to disclose it later in my employment life cycle with an organization, it has made working at that organization harder always because they sort of feel like maybe I entered the organization under false pretenses, which isn't fair to them. But then I also feel like they're not sort of upholding their end of the bargain to support me as an employee. The times that I have gone in being open about my disability and my access requirements, thankfully, more often than not, I have been met with a great reception. And thankfully at Making Space, that was no exception. I understand that not everyone is able to do that, and your psychological safety absolutely has to come first. But again, with what Kathy said, if they have an issue with you asking about access requirements, if they have an issue with you disclosing your disability, then that's likely not a place that you want to work anyway. And unfortunately, yeah, the list of places that we want to work is going to get shorter and shorter, but that's just kind of the unfortunate truth of these companies that are in the world.
Thank you. Another anonymous question, how can organizations ensure their job descriptions and requirements are inclusive and accessible to a diverse candidate pool?
That's a great question. I am sure that we have all seen those job descriptions where it is very clearly a desk job. You are working at a computer probably 95% of the day, but they are forcing you to work in an office, even though you can do that job remotely. That's likely not an accessible position. Or the requirement that asks you to be able to lift like 15 to 25 pounds and stand for long periods of time. Again, even though it is a desk job, those are things that are kind of standard in job descriptions. And unfortunately, with the power of Google, it's really easy to get a job description template that a lot of companies use and build their jobs off of that. And those templates are very outdated, and they include these access requirements that truly are unnecessary. So make sure that you understand the job that you're writing the description for and are truly looking for those items that are requirements of the job. I am essentially a product manager and an operations manager for my organization. I don't have to lift anything. So if my job description said that I had to lift 25-pound boxes, I would know that that was not true. And I would ask that it be removed from the job description. So it's really something as simple as that. You just have to be considering the actual job and not the standard based on outdated job descriptions that are out there.
Catherine, anything to add, or should I go to the next question?
So excellent. Hannah said it perfectly.
Wonderful. Okay. The next question is, what are changes that can be made in hiring practices to shift the responsibility of achieving access from the disabled person to the employer?
Kathy, do you want to kick us off?
That's a great one. I think just being totally upfront with them from the get-go and educating them, because a lot of times employers might not know what they don't know. So giving them education and letting them know, that might be the stopgap. I mean, it's not always going to be the case that folks are specifically trying to exclude people. It's just that they might just not know. I didn't know honestly anything about digital accessibility before I joined this particular organization. And now I'm learning so much more every single day. So I think maybe just being open and upfront with specific hiring managers, if you are able to get in front of them, or folks in between, like recruiters, just being open and honest with them. Yeah, there's going to be some folks that don't listen or don't want to hear about it, but there also might be some folks that actually want to make a difference and take that request seriously and then try to do something about it.
And the only thing that I'll add, because it's a slight shameless self-promotion, is that Making Space is looking to do a lot of work when it comes to educating these employers on inclusive hiring practices. So that way the burden is not on the job seeker. We obviously have a long way to go. But we are actively working with all of our partners on improving their hiring processes and making sure that their hiring managers and recruiters are truly creating these inclusive environments for all applicants that come through, regardless of disability status and access needs.
Great, thank you. Now, AI, we're all talking about AI. The question is, how can job seekers navigate AI-driven hiring tools and ensure that they aren't being unfairly filtered out?
That is such a good question. And it's unfortunate that it's still so fresh that there aren't specific answers. However, from what I know, from my experience on the staffing side of things, is we use a lot of tools. A lot of them are becoming more and more AI centric. So what I can say is that for now, it seems like everything is very keyword driven. If you're able to create an accessible resume that can be easily parsed into an applicant tracking system or an ATS, which is what a lot of folks use during their hiring process, that goes back to our suggestions earlier. If you have a lot of formatting in that resume, it's not going to parse correctly, and a lot of your information is going to get lost. If you keep it plain language, and just very general without anything extra graphics, tables, or anything like that, there's a better chance that your resume is going to get parsed correctly. For AI specific parsing, like I mentioned before, very keyword centric. So say you do have that CPAC certification. Slap it on that resume anywhere you can. Put it next to your name, put it in your certification section, put it in your summary, so that for folks that are working on that particular job that might not be on the hiring team specifically, maybe they're recruiters or HR professionals that just don't know, they'll see that CPAC certification as a preferred in the job description. They'll do a search on that, and then right there, your resume will hit 3 times with that keyword. So there's little things that you can do to help. Um, Even though we don't know all of the answers yet, there are some things that we do know that we can try to kind of not beat the system, but work with the system a little bit better.
Great. And a very timely question. How are employers now handling remote work and accessibility for employees? We know there's a lot of changes happening.
Yes. And it kind of runs the gamut, right? I mean, there are just as many employers that are still remote in the aftermath of the height of the COVID pandemic. But there are also employers that are still making massive moves in order to get their employees back into the office full time or even part time. So it really does depend on the individual organizations. Um, and yeah, it's I don't know where I was going with that. I completely like my mind just blanked. Wow, it really is a Friday afternoon. Yeah, it's yeah, unfortunately it is just kind of an employer by employer basis. Doing your research on the organizations, if it's really important to you to work for a company that is remote first, because that is one of your access requirements. A lot of these companies now, because there is this distinct move for larger organizations like Salesforce, for example, to get people back into the office. A lot of these companies will advertise that they are fully remote or remote first, and they put it in gigantic letters on every job description that they post. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Check their socials, because it's becoming a almost like a work perk for others, not just for those with access requirements.
Something I will say about that, and I do agree 100% with every single thing you say. From a recruitment perspective, at times, if we're posting on job boards for a specific job, there might not be options on that job board to click remote. So if you see something that says that a job is located in Seattle, Washington, I know it's time consuming, but click into the job and see what it says in the body of the text too, because sometimes it might not be something where they can easily have that option to show that it's 100% remote. They might still have to put that it's based out of wherever, Seattle, Washington, San Francisco Bay. And so that's why I would definitely urge you to not just quickly skim over. If something looks like a perfect fit, definitely take the time to look into that job description, into the body of the text to see if it truly is on site, if it's hybrid on site. Maybe it says it's hybrid on site, but really in the body of the text, you really only need to be there quarterly for some important meetings. And that's something that's doable for you where you're able to travel quarterly. Then that's why I would say definitely take the time to click into the job descriptions as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. There are a couple of questions we didn't get to, but we're running out of time. So what I would like to say to the attendees is that in the slide deck is your contact information and your LinkedIn profiles. So if there are questions that are still lingering, feel free to reach out. And Catherine and Hannah can answer those for you directly. Thank you both so much. This has been super informative. I know we've covered a lot of ground and it's really been fantastic. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you to Teach
Thank
Access
you.
and to all the questions and to all the back and forth. We appreciate everything.
Yeah,
Terrific.
truly. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks for joining us. It has been a great 2 days of the 2025 Teach Access Student Academy. Another special thank you to our sponsors, Merck, Verizon, Microsoft, Google, Meta, and Salesforce. Could not do this work without you. All of the recordings and slide decks will be sent out to all attendees in the coming days. And just as a reminder, we'll also include, and Hannah's here, can tell you a little bit, but it'll be in the email, If you wanted to have your resume available to the sponsors, you'll be able to create a profile on Making Space and upload your resume, house it there, and the sponsors will have access to those resumes. It's not a guaranteed internship or a job, but it is a way that we can connect you as attending the Student Academy to the employers who might be looking. So those instructions will be in the email as well. And Hannah, thank you for helping to make that happen.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so again, thanks to everyone for being here. Thanks to all of our sponsors, all of our presenters, everyone who has attended. This has been a fantastic Student Academy, and we look forward to talking again soon. Have a great day.